Chapter Xuanhuan. It is impossible to work. Shangdu is a sanatorium with a quiet environment and full of birdsong and flowers, in the slightly dim room because most of the curtains were drawn to block out the sunlight. A handsome young man with pale skin was doing a jigsaw puzzle. It's not a children's toy, but a puzzle with 1,000 pieces suitable for adults to play. However, the boy's way of playing seems a little different from that of ordinary people. All the puzzle pieces are facing up instead of right side up, and except for those parts on the edges, they look exactly the same. The boy was very interested in the puzzle and was trying to piece it together very carefully. He was almost done with it. The boy's name is Bai Ye. He suffers from autism, mild schizophrenia and other mixed symptoms. He is a veteran patient in this sanatorium. When he was 5 years old, something inexplicably appeared in Bai Ye's mind, the staff of power and wealth. So Bai Ye, who was originally just an ordinary child, became a problem child. After a few years, there was really no hope of recovery, and for various reasons. He came to this sanatorium is certainly not an ordinary sanatorium. The patients living there all have mental problems like Bai Ye. Some are more serious, while others are mild mental problems that are not considered diseases. Nursing homes will not accept truly seriously ill patients. Sanatoriums are expensive, and the patients there usually receive better care than those in mental hospitals, much better. Bai Ye is 18 years old this year. It took him nearly 13 years and half a year ago for him to become the agent of this scepter. He got rid of his confused state and gradually recovered to become a normal person. Of course, this normal is only relative. We cannot expect a person who has been out of touch with society for more than 10 years to become a truly normal person through learning and restorative treatment in a short period of time. But at least Bai Ye now has no problem communicating with others. He can speak and laugh, and has no difficulty reading and writing. He is at least at the level of a second-year junior high school student. It can be regarded as a great example of counterattack for the sanatorium. 13 years of experience as a psychiatrist could certainly not be completely without reward. Bai Ye became the agent of the scepter, the lowest level agent. However, even as the lowest level agent, Bai Ye has some extremely special abilities. The first is trading capability. As a first level agent of the scepter, Bai Ye can make 3 transactions with anyone within 24 standard hours, 3 transactions that are approved by both parties. In it, a forced transaction can be conducted, and the transaction will be forcibly completed regardless of whether the other party agrees or not. As long as Bai Ye asked someone to trade, no matter how absurd the content was, the other party would seriously consider whether the trade was feasible. As for the condition that determined whether it was feasible, it was naturally the price Bai Ye paid. As for forced transactions, it is equivalent to pressing the other party's head. Eliminating the consideration process, Bai Ye only needs to give a symbolic reward. The second ability that Bai Ye can use is teleportation. It is not teleportation like Doraemon's Anywhere Door, but the ability to send Bai Ye himself to other worlds. This also proves that this scepter is definitely not from the Earth but from another world. Black, check my current status. Spreading out his hand, a black scepter with black patterns on it, about 1 meter long, and looking mysterious, was suspended above his palm. Bai Ye spoke softly. Black. After 13 years of adjustment, Bai Ye became the agent, and in order to better use the scepter, the best auxiliary system was born based on the current situation. If the scepter is likened to a complex electrical appliance, then black is the instruction manual of the appliance. It's just that both are quite high-end. Yes. Hei's voice was cold and mechanical, without any emotion. As the voice appeared in Bai Ye's ears, a piece of information also appeared in front of Bai Ye. White, race human, identity first level agent of the staff of wealth and power, power and wealth value 0. The so-called power and wealth value is the key to Bai Ye's further control over the rod of power and wealth. If you want to gain power and wealth, all you have to do is trade. Only by making continuous profits through transactions and thus obtaining power and wealth value can one move up from a first-level agent to truly become the master of the staff of power and wealth, and go from working for it to controlling it. This is the basic situation. Bai Ye is not clear about some deeper information about the scepter of power and wealth. The outstretched palm was closed again, and the scepter disappeared at the same time. Bai Ye stood up, opened the door and walked out. Bai Ye was in the living building of the sanatorium. There are 10 floors in total. The first floor is the lobby, the second floor is the restaurant, and the floors above to the 10th floor are all accommodation. There are 10 comfortable rooms on each floor for patients like Bai Ye to stay in. The rooms are equipped with all kinds of facilities and are located on the north and south sides. The elevator is in the middle of the floor. There are now more than 50 patients in the sanatorium, and more than 20 rooms are vacant. Bai Ye, as a true veteran resident, lives on the top 10 floors, and he is the only one living on the entire floor. We took the elevator to the second floor, where many people were already having dinner in the restaurant, including some patients, nursing home staff and 1 or 2 family members of patients who came to visit. After walking up to the window and ordering the food, Bai Ye went to the small table next to him and sat down. Soon someone brought up the freshly prepared food. After all, it is an expensive sanatorium and it is impossible for patients to eat from the same pot in the cafeteria. Bai Ye stuffed the delicious food into his mouth carelessly, and after a while, someone sat down in front of him. It was not a fellow patient, but a doctor from the nursing home, a very young and beautiful female doctor in a white coat. Even without any makeup and wearing deliberately old-fashioned glasses, it still can't hide the stunning feeling conveyed by that face. Bai Ye, how are you feeling recently? The female doctor asked directly after sitting down. Song Yin became a doctor in this sanatorium a year ago, and took over Bai Ye's stubborn tenant in the sanatorium, with the blind confidence of a newborn calf that is not afraid of a tiger. At that time, other doctors in the sanatorium were waiting to see the joke of this young and beautiful girl. Unexpectedly, after Song Yin's long-term treatment, Bai Ye gradually recovered, and Song Yin was able to gain a foothold in the sanatorium. In addition to her own strong abilities, Song Yin is now a star doctor in the sanatorium, and many patients and even their families come for her. Song Yin's feelings and attitude towards Bai Ye are also slightly different. At least she is closer to him than ordinary patients. Very good. Bai Ye looked up at Song Yin and then continued to eat. Song Yin frowned slightly and then relaxed her brows, and asked with a faint smile, "Have you contacted your family? When do you plan to be discharged from the hospital?" Bai Ye swallowed the last bite of food and looked at Song Yin with a strange expression. "Why do you want to be discharged from the hospital?" Song Yin blinked, and after a short silence, asked, "Do you like it here? Don't you plan to be discharged from the hospital?" "Yes." Bai Ye nodded. "As a matter of course, it's good here. After I'm discharged from the hospital, I'll have to work to support myself. I've rep. Isn't it good to work and support yourself?" Song Yin said that this is the necessary growth path for everyone. Ye chuckled. It was impossible for him to work. He would never work in his life. Song Yin let out a breath, and she suddenly realized that although she had helped Bai Ye get rid of the identity of an autistic child, and even at one point he was no different from a normal person, due to the long-term lack of contact with the outside world, he seemed to be sliding in another abnormal direction. "Do you like it here?" Song Yin asked. She wanted to find out what Bai Ye was thinking. "Of course, everyone here is talented, good-tempered, and nice to talk to," Bai Ye said with a smile, turned around and shouted to a middle-aged man eating at another table, "Lao Wang, you bold man." The man who was eating over there suddenly slammed the chopsticks in his hand, his face full of anger, and was about to stand up and fight with Bai Ye. But in an instant he seemed to remember something, shook his head, whispered a few words similar to self-consolation, and smiled at Bai Ye. "Bai Ye, it is wrong for you to talk like this. Even if you are handsome, you will be beaten if you talk like this." Bai Ye nodded, then turned back to Song Yin and said, "Look." Song Yin's right hand on the table unconsciously clenched into a fist, and she resisted the urge to put the dish in front of her on Bai Ye's head. "Comrade Lao Wang is a mank. He finally showed some improvement after treatment, but now Bai Ye has done such a crazy thing." Fortunately, Song Yin is a doctor with professional ethics, so she can only keep a good temper but still keep a smiling attitude, and said to Bai Ye, "Since you are not going to leave the hospital, then stay for a while." Then she stood up and left quickly. Speaking of which, Song Yin also has good intentions. The Qingshan Sanatorium is not a non-profit welfare institution. As long as the money is given in place, Bai Ye will stay there until the nursing home closes or he dies. The money given by Bai Ye's family has always been quite adequate. After watching Song Yin leave with unsteady step, walked to the elevator and went upstairs leisurely. After returning to his room, Bai Ye locked the door, changed into a pair of sneakers, stretched his body, and said teleport. Bai Ye's body suddenly became blurred and then disappeared in the room. Chapter RN2. Gotham City is a city of talented people and beautiful scenery. It wasn't that Bai Ye was reckless to happily teleport directly to another world without making any relevant preparations. Well, maybe he didn't think about it that much, but even if he wanted to prepare, there was nothing to prepare. The world chosen by the staff of wealth and power is completely random for Bai Ye, a first-level agent. He has no way of choosing to be teleported to a certain world and has no idea what he will face. The only thing that can be confirmed is that the world will be a stable one with civilized order, and Bai Ye will not be thrown into some wild place. It is also impossible to directly throw Bai Ye into a jetty such as the deep sea, but he will be teleported to a suitable and safe location. Clothes, shoes, and small objects that can be placed close to the body or held in the hands will also be teleported together. But other larger personal belongings cannot be teleported together for the time being. There was not much dizziness. The whole process of transmission was just a black screen before his eyes, and he left the room and came to another world. It's simple, fast, and feels unreal. The place where White Knight appears is a dark alley where some elements of a modern city can be seen. Black, scan and collect language and text elements, Bai Ye said. An invisible wave emanated from Bai, and after a moment, Hai's voice sounded. "All the information has been collected, and you can choose to infuse it directly, or organize it." "Of course it is direct infusion," Bai Ye answered without thinking. When it comes to things like organizing and studying, no matter how talented Bai Ye is, it is impossible for him to master a foreign language in a short period of time. Besides, studying is a very tiring thing. Bai Ye will not treat himself badly. If you have a better way and don't use it, you'd be a fool. In fact, when Bai Ye was studying in the sanatorium, he did not really start learning the basic knowledge like a child, but he used the power of the scepter of power and wealth to directly infuse it. Bai Ye actually spends most of his study time learning about a world that is quite unfamiliar to him through platforms such as television and the internet. After mastering the language and writing of this world, at least a large area, Bai Ye walked out of the alley with an excited smile on his face. It was evening, and night was approaching. The street lights along the street have been turned on, but the brightness is very low. Even worse than the last bit of light brought by the setting sun, the streets are wide, and looking up you can see all kinds of tall buildings. It was a typical forest of steel and concrete, and even colder than the average forest of steel and concrete. As far as the night was concerned, the main colors of the city were only black and gray. Even the neon lights of the shops on both sides of the street inexplicably had a grey tint. Sharp as swords, in Gothic style, this is a city that appears gorgeous at first glance, but if you look closely, you will discover the eerie feeling beneath the glitz. Fortunately, the various groups of people on the street dispelled this gloomy feeling. If you walk in such a city in the late night, you will definitely not feel very comfortable. The curious and excited smile on Bai Ye's face did not diminish at all, and he looked around with interest. After wandering around for about half an hour, the sky had completely darkened and the street lights finally came in handy. Just as he was thinking about who to find to make a deal, Bai Ye heard a suppressed low cry coming from the side. Then, the pedestrians who were originally strolling on the street began to walk in a hurry. Some got on the bus, some went into the nearby buildings, and even the speed of the cars on the road increased a bit. What happened? Bai Ye grabbed a boy who passed by. The young man was about to walk into a restaurant not far away when he was stopped by Bai Ye. He seemed a little anxious, but still said patiently, "Look at the sky." Bai Ye looked up at the sky and saw a bat symbol illuminated by a searchlight in the night sky. "I understand." Bai Ye laughed and let go of his hand. "Let's hide for now. God knows what kind of lunatic will come out this time. It will be terrible if we get affected." The young man walked into the restaurant. Of course Bai Ye didn't follow. Instead, he stood there and smiled happily. Gotham City is home to many talented people, and Arkham is home to many talented people. This world, or this city, is known to Bai Ye, or it can be said that he is familiar with it. Well, it is only relatively familiar. He knew this city, the darkness and danger hidden beneath its apparent prosperity, and that it could even be said to be a different place during the day and at night. Gotham City during the day is a prosperous city with a developed economy and a steel forest. Gotham City at night is a paradise for mentally ill people and criminals, of course. It's not to say that it's so exaggerated that ordinary people should not go out at night, otherwise it will be a tragedy. It's just that the public security in this city is indeed quite bad, and the crime rate is still high. But the appearance of the bat symbol in the sky means that Gotham City's Dark Knight, Batman, will appear, something that could render Gotham City's police officers helpless. Turn on the searchlights, and let Batman handle it. Must be dangerous, naturally. Everyone should avoid it as soon as possible. If they are affected, where can they cry? The originally bustling streets were beginning to become empty. Bai Ye stretched out his hand and stopped a taxi. The driver stopped, rolled down the window and said, "Where are you going?" "If it's too far, I won't drive." "Iceberg Restaurant," Bai Ye said. "Is it far?" "Not far." The driver nodded and said, "Hurry up and get in the car. I'll be home soon too." "No hurry. I want to make a deal with you." Bai Ye looked at the driver and said, "What?" The driver was stunned for a moment, and the anxious look on his face gradually faded. "Okay, what deal? I have no money. How about you take me to the Iceberg Restaurant and I tell you a joke?" Bai Ye said. "Okay. Get in the car, it's just another block away. A 5-minute drive, or you can walk." The driver said after thinking for a few seconds, "Thank you." Bai Ye smiled and got into the car. It was indeed a city with simple folk customs. The driver accepted the compliment with a smile. "How much power and wealth did you get from this transaction?" Bai Ye asked in his heart as he got in the car and told the driver a bad joke. "1,005. Doesn't this mean nothing?" Bai. It is not easy to obtain power and wealth value, and not all transactions can obtain power and wealth value. Simply put, the larger the transaction scale, the greater the impact, or the greater the profit, the more power and financial value can be obtained. A transaction as small as the one just mentioned that can be equivalent to a transaction that cannot obtain power and financial value. That 1,005 was generated when Bai Ye's own level was still very low. If Bai Ye already had some power and wealth at this time, he would not even have this 0/5 power and wealth. The car stopped in front of the Iceberg Restaurant, and the driver stepped on the accelerator and left without saying a word. This Iceberg Restaurant is just an ordinary restaurant on the surface. In fact, this is the place where the underworld tycoon and arms dealer of Gotham City is. Bai Ye is not sure whether it is the base of the Penguin, but there is no doubt that the Penguin can be found through this restaurant. On both sides of the entrance of the Iceberg Restaurant there were 2 burly men in black clothes, about 2 meters tall, with their hands clasped in front of them, seemingly acting as guards. Generally speaking, having such a character at the entrance of a restaurant will definitely drive away some potential customers, but this is Gotham City, a city of talented people and beautiful scenery. Having 2 big men like this guarding outside will give people an inexplicable sense of security. For example, Bai Ye now saw several people hurriedly walking into the Iceberg Restaurant, apparently because of the appearance of the bat symbol in the sky. If these people knew that the boss behind this restaurant was the famous Penguin in Gotham City, would they be scared and run away screaming? But then again, the Penguin is a little different from other mentally ill criminals who will be imprisoned in Arkham Asylum after being caught. He is a profit-oriented guy who is eager to climb up. The Penguin won't be like the Riddler, who is a psychopath and installs his own puzzles all over Gotham City, nor will he be like Two-Face, who robs a bank and flips a coin to decide whether a person deserves to die. It is even more impossible to capture some hostages and play a game with Batman like the crazy Joker did. Relatively speaking, the danger posed by Penguin to civilians is relatively small. Of course, if you think that the Penguin is harmless, the body of such a naive person would have probably been thrown into the sea outside Gotham City. "I want to see your boss." Bai Ye walked up to one of the big men and spoke. "Boy, do you know what you are talking about?" The big man was stunned for a moment. "Of course, I want to meet your boss, Cobblepot, or the Penguin," Bai Ye said with a smile. The two big men's expressions changed slightly. You know, not many people know that the boss behind the Iceberg restaurant is Penguin Man. How did this frail-looking kid, who might not even be an adult, know that? I know Batman's true identity and want to make a deal with Cobblepot. Bai Yi didn't have much time to think with the two men and directly explained his purpose. The two men looked at each other. One stared at Bai Yi, while the other walked aside and made a phone call. Soon the man came back. Boy, wait here. Why don't you invite me in for a seat? Bai Yi pointed to the door of the Iceberg restaurant and said, at least buy me a drink. Coke, yay. After drinking a cup of Coke, walked out of the Iceberg restaurant and sat in the back seat of a black car parked at the door. After chapter 003, he immediately rose to prominence and headed for the peak. Unlike him, he traveled through time and space and became Xuanhuan. He had to work very hard to barely reach a well-off life. He originally thought that he had Bai Sujan as his golden thigh waiting for him. He didn't expect that the golden thigh turned out to be a monster that wanted to kill him. Then the monk, Xuanhuan, Linky and other golden thighs appeared on the stage. Unfortunately, none of them could be used and instead brought serious danger. Even if God is going to give a man a great responsibility, he must first be made to suffer in his heart, toil his muscles and bones, starve his body, and be destitute. Isn't it time for that to end? Do I have to continue to suffer? We are both time travelers. Why is he so miserable? There is one last way. Bai Yi said, it depends on whether you have the decision or not. What? Sushan asked. I will finally perform a secret method for you, junior brother, which can extract the innate spiritual energy in your body. Bai Yi said, in this way, you will not have a cultivation speed far beyond that of ordinary people, but you will not become the target of public criticism. After all, those two monsters came for your innate spiritual energy. After discovering that you have lost your innate spiritual energy, I, a poor monk, will not make things too difficult for you. Sushan had no doubt about this. After all, White Snake and Green Snake had no intention of attacking him directly at the beginning. If they are really such cruel monsters, they would just attack them as soon as they meet. Since he had the advantage at the beginning, he did not choose that method, but instead chose the gentle method of dual cultivation. That at least means that the two snake monsters are not actually evil monsters. It's just that she looks so scary that people can't even look at her. What about the innate spiritual energy that was taken out? Shuzhan asked. That thing can be taken out, but can it still be used after the innate spiritual energy is taken out? It is not so easy to dissipate, Bai Yi said. I will preserve it with a secret method to minimize the loss of spiritual energy. When you have achieved success in your cultivation, come and ask me to take it back. When you refine it, your power will be greatly improved. After more than 100 years, perhaps we can restore our former strength. 9 Nether Evil Monk. Shuzhan's heart was naturally filled with excitement, although you can tell from the name that it is an evil cult. But so what? As long as you are strong enough, history is always written by the victors. If the 9 Nether Evil Monk had won that year, he would probably not be called an evil monk, but something like the 9 Nether Divine Monk. Senior brother, I don't know any cultivation methods, as I have said. Foolish boy, since I have said so, I will naturally accept you as a disciple on behalf of my master. Bai Yi said, I will teach you the method of cultivation. Yes, senior. Shun agreed immediately. If he didn't agree now, when would he agree? Come. Bai Yi took out a dagger from his wide sleeves with trembling hands. Shushan jumped 3 meters away. Brother, what are you doing? In addition to vigilant, there was also a vicious look in his eyes. Of course I will help you to become a monk, Bai Yi said as a matter of course. Shushan then remembered that the other party was a monk. Isn't it normal to have a bald head when starting over, senior brother? In this situation, let's forget about this kind of red tape, okay? Shushan said with a dry laugh. He doesn't have the appearance of the monk Wuwa. I don't know how ugly I will look after shaving my head. What do you think? Bai Yi asked. Bite. Tu sat down and bowed his head resignedly. Up to now, Monk Wuwa has been sitting all the time, and it is obvious that he is really seriously injured. Bai Yi stretched out his hand and held Shushan's head. I'm seriously injured now and my hands are not so steady. Just as Shushan was about to speak, he felt a chill on his head. He was so scared that he quickly shut up, hoping Wuwa wouldn't shake his hand and leave a bloody cut on him. Even if Wuwa's hands were shaking a little, they were not shaking to that extent. A few minutes later, a brand new bald head was born. Okay, junior brother, do you remember your Buddhist name from back then? Bai Yi asked after completing his ordination. Shushan shook his head. God knew what the Buddhist name of the 9 Nether Evil Monk was back then. Could it be called Woyu? Think carefully. My name is Wuwa. As my junior fellow apprentice, what would you be called? Bai Yi persuaded earnest. No leaves, no. Should it be no fruits? Shushan asked. If this is the Buddhist name, he thinks it is normal that Wuhua is the only one left in this broken sect. Of course, if we think in the normal direction, the Dharma names would naturally be such as ignorance and emptiness. Closer. Back then, your Buddhist name was Fig, Bai said. The awkward smile on Shushan's face suddenly froze. What the hell is a fig? Oh, Bai Yi saw Shushan's expression and chuckled. His junior brother's expression was so similar to that of the past. The tone was full of nostalgia. Normal people would have this expression when hearing my Dharma name. Is your sect sick? How can a monk's Dharma name be called like this? Shushan roared crazily in his heart. If I had the strength, I would definitely betray the sect. The 9 Nether Evil Monk is much better than the fig. In fact, I betrayed the sect and became the 9 Nether Evil Monk because this name is too embarrassing. When you left the sect you shouted, it was you who forced me to take this Buddhist name. Bai Yi said, junior brother, you won't be like this in this life. Right, it's actually true. Xuanhuan almost vomited blood. No. No. Definitely not. Xuanhuan shook his head repeatedly. It's just a fig, he admitted it. Anyway, as long as you don't shout about it everywhere, not many people will know about it. Fig. This is the basic skill of our sect. You should keep it for now. Bai Ye took out a secret book from his sleeve and gave it to Xuanhuan. This is the inventory of the Yinyu dynasty and the Buddhist practice. It just fits Bai Ye's identity as a flowerless person. After a quick glance. Okay. Fig. Let's make a deal with me. The tech book is your reward and I will get your innate spiritual energy. Bai Ye said trade. Xuanhuan was confused. This is exactly the secret method I mastered, Bai Ye said, invoking the rules of heaven, drawing in some of the power of the god of wealth, and completing a fair transaction. Otherwise, how can you take out the innate spiritual energy in your body? You must know that except for guiding it out through dual cultivation and turning it into your own use, if you use other methods to take out the innate spiritual energy in your body, you will surely die. After listening to Bai Ye's half-true and half-false words, Xuanhuan finally understood why the white snake wanted to marry him. So that's how it is. Hurry up, Fig. I can't hold on any longer, Bai Ye said, after performing the secret method. I'm afraid I won't even have the strength to move a little. Then you can send me to Jinshan Temple, and then leave here. After you have achieved success in cultivation, come back here and leave a message, and I will find you. Good. Xuan nodded solemnly, muttering something, and a golden light appeared behind his head. In short, no matter how mysterious it can be as mysterious as possible. Then he extended his hand to Xuanhuan. Soon, a spot of light emerged from Xuanhuan's body and formed a small ball of light in Bai Ye's palm. To put it simply, the innate spiritual energy is Xuanhuan's ability, compared to the abilities of mutants. Nero and his friend's powers aren't much different. It's just more secretive and obscure and doesn't have much impact on Xuanhuan himself. Therefore, although his innate spiritual energy was taken away, Xuanhuan himself only felt slightly weak. Unlike others, he did not become extremely weak and needed to recuperate for a period of time. Compared to Xuanhuan, who could still put up a fight, Wu Bei was really half dead after the transaction. After putting away the light ball, even his head was about to droop. Brother, how are you? Xuanhuan said anxiously. I am not dead yet, but I cannot move anymore. Please send me to Jinshan Temple. He spoke these words in a discontinuous and reluctant manner. Brother, are you really unable to take even one step? Xuanhuan helped Bai Ye up, put him on his shoulders, and said as he walked unsteadily. Bai Ye did not answer him, as if he did not even have the strength to speak. Since that is really the case, Xuanhuan said as he walked, then I can let you die with peace of mind, senior brother. As he spoke, his other hand suddenly stabbed Bai Ye's waist. In his hand was the dagger that Bai Ye had casually thrown on the ground after he had just completed his ordination. How could he really give his innate spiritual energy to this monk? He still remembers everything the monk did to him. Just at the moment he made his move, a green aura swept through Xuanhuan's body. Xuanhuan's body shook. His face and hands were suddenly covered with dark black, and he opened his mouth and spat out black blood. In less than half a second he lay on the ground, deader than dead, despicable mortal. The green snake and the white snake walked out from the darkness and looked at the dead Xuanhuan and said, Amitabha. Bai Ye chanted a Buddhist name loudly. Rather than saying that this donor was despicable, it would be better to say that I was the one who brought out his inner demons step by step. Chapter 1004. Let's make a deal. But on the next morning, when the Penguin Man was about to look for Bai Ye, he discovered that this mysterious guy had disappeared without a trace. Neither the surveillance outside the room nor the men found any trace of this man, nor could they find how he left. He just disappeared into the room. And his elusiveness was almost as elusive as Batman. How did he leave? Are you all blow anything, or did he successfully make you blind like Batman? Penguin roared at his men angrily. The Penguin's men were scolded so badly that they huddled there and dared not say a word. It wasn't until one of Penguin's secretaries arrived that Penguin's anger was slightly calmed. The Penguin Man was so angry, of course. Not just because of Bai Ye's mysterious disappearance, but also because after he went back last night, he thought about it and realized that he did not gain much advantage in this deal with Bai Ye. Knowing Batman's true identity doesn't actually help the Penguin that much. The reason why a secret is that it cannot be known to many other people. There's no way the Penguin could tell those lunatics in Gotham that the person underneath Batman's mask is Bruce Wayne. He wanted to keep it secret and bring it out only when necessary. However, the embarrassing thing is that the Penguin Man cannot think of any benefits that knowing this secret will bring to himself. He can't use this secret against Batman. If Batman knew about this, what would he do? The Penguin felt that the more likely possibility was that this guy would come over and beat him so hard that he lost his memory in order to resolve the matter. No, he fell unconscious after a despairing blow, and woke up in prison or hospital with pain all over his body after an unknown period of time. The Penguin didn't like the usual process after Batman. Even the Penguin didn't dare to shoot Batman at will. If he wanted to kill him, he had to consider the subsequent impact. The most embarrassing thing in the world is that Gotham City can do without Batman, but if Bruce Wayne dies in Gotham City and the Wayne Group becomes turbulent, it will be no less than a disaster for Gotham City. If other criminals might have the idea that they are going to destroy Gotham, then that is absolutely impossible for the Penguin. His base is in Gotham City. As long as Gotham City is there, he is the arrogant underworld tycoon, Oswald Chesterfield cop. The other party told him that the price of Batman's identity was actually not low. But of course, it was not so high that the Penguin felt he was fooled and deceived. It's always a good thing to have a secret in your hands. The reason why he wanted to find Bai Ye was because the Penguin Man was still thinking about extracting other benefits from Bai Ye. But he didn't expect that the other party suddenly disappeared right under his nose. No wonder Penguin. Where did Bai Ye go? He just returned to his original world as a first-level agent. He cannot stay in other worlds for a long time. Every time he is teleported to other worlds, Bai Ye can stay in that world for 24 hours a standard time. At the 12th hour, Bai Ye can choose to unteleport again. You have to wait 72 standard hours or 3 days, starting from the moment you come back. White Knight, race human, identity, level 1 agent of the Staff of Power and Wealth. Power and wealth value 105. This is Bai Ye's current status. The transaction can the Penguin Man align to obtain 100 points of power and wealth. Bai Ye said secretly in his heart, to be promoted to a level 2, you need to accumulate 1,000 points of power and wealth with a progress of 10 cent Joe. 1,005 points of wealth have been ignored. Hai's voice sounded. What are the functions of power and wealth? Bai Ye asked. The benefits of an advanced manual are reflected as Bai Ye gradually gains wealth. He no longer needs to experiment again and again on his own. Just flipping through the manual is enough. Affect the teleportation world, extend the state, and transform wealth. Hai said. How does it affect me? Can I choose the world freely? Bai Ye asked. Hei's voice was still cold and mechanical. If you pay a certain amount of wealth, you can teleport several times, and you can only choose the last world you teleported to. Oh, so next time I go to Gotham City, how much wealth will I need to pay? Consume 50 points of wealth to perform 5 fixed world transfers, which cannot be changed. Hai said that the consumption of wealth is not fixed. After 5 times will cost 500 points of wealth to continue to perform 5 fixed times. I see. Bai Ye said. What about extending the stay? 1 point of power and wealth can extend 1 standard time, and you can return to the current main world at will during the extended time. Will the return be disrupted? The return will be disturbed by powerful forces. Hai said. How strong? Bai Ye asked a question that was somewhat nonsensical and difficult to answer. Fortunately, Hai has no emotions and will not have any emotional fluctuations because of the questions asked by Bai Ye. He just simply answers it cannot be quantified. What about the last wealth transformation? The currencies recognized by different and similar civilization systems can be converted into each other, Hai said, and at the same time asked the question whether to consume 10,000 points of wealth to convert the existing currency into the legal currency of the main world. The returning Bai Ye certainly did not come empty-handed. The umbrella he got from the Penguin was worth 100,000, which was barely a small item, but he successfully brought it back. What method is it? Bai Ye asked. It can be converted into 500,000 Chinese currency in the main world, and you can choose cash or electronic currency mode. Note that too much wealth conversion will affect the stability of the original economic system, and more wealth value will be consumed for stability. Well, let's put it aside for now and talk about it later. Bai Ye collected the money he got from Penguin Man. He was not short of money. Bai Ye has a bank card under his name that can be used normally. Ever since Bai Ye gradually showed signs of recovery, his family would deposit a lot of living expenses into the card every month. The Bai family will not be stingy with this little money. If he was really stingy, Bai Ye would not have lived in this sanatorium. Of course, it cannot be said that he cares a lot about Bai Ye. His attitude is still quite cold. What Bai Ye wants to say about this is, that's great, he doesn't care about his family's attitude towards him, whether they give him money or not. Bai Ye doesn't care. On the contrary, Bai Ye would only feel it was troublesome if the other side really wanted to accept Bai Ye and wanted him to be discharged from the hospital and take him home. His goal was to go to the heavens and the endless world to do all kinds of things. No, he wanted to do a good deal, but it was not as convenient as in the sanatorium at home. As a veteran patient, Bai Ye actually doesn't receive much attention. As long as Bai Ye doesn't make any noise, medical staff will not deliberately come to check Bai Ye's recent condition. Leaving the magical umbrella in the room, Bai Ye happily left the room, went to the restaurant to have a delicious and rich breakfast, then returned to the room and pieced together the puzzle pieces scattered on the glass coffee table. Soon, Bai Ye completed the last few pieces of the puzzle, but the backs were still facing up and the contents on the front could not be seen. Just at this moment, there was a knock on the door of the room, and Song Yin's voice was heard. Bai Ye, are you in there? Bai Ye walked over and opened the door. Song Yin did not rush in. Instead, she looked Bai Ye up and down to confirm whether there was any difference in his condition from yesterday. Then she walked to the window, opened the curtains, and let the dazzling sunlight project into the room. Bai Ye narrowed his eye. He didn't like such glaring sunlight. You should go out and get some sun more often. Song Yin's tone was a little strong, and she seemed to be planning to have a good chat with Bai Ye to see if she could correct his weird ideas. In Song Yin's view, although Bai Ye is no longer the autistic person he used to be, he is still a patient. In a sense this is true. Sitting on the sofa next to the coffee table, Song Yin motioned Bai Ye to sit down as well. You sit down too. She had no intention of letting Bai Ye go to a consultation room or something like that. Bai Ye would obviously be more relaxed inside the room. However, Song Yin's actions still showed that she wanted to take a dominant position. It would be bad if she was led into a ditch by Bai Ye like last night. Okay, Dr. Wang. Bai Ye sat down. Bai Ye, my last name is Song. Song Yin corrected Bai Ye's mistake seriously. Oh, Bai Ye nodded, not knowing whether he had taken it to heart. How are you doing lately? Song Yin started with a meaningless opening remark, but before she could finish her words, she was interrupted by Bai Ye. Dr. Li, let's make a deal. Bai Ye looked at Song Yin and said with a smile. What? Song Yin was stunned for a moment, then asked, "What deal? Please help me open a store. I don't know how to open a store." Bai Yi looked a little excited, as if I was a genius who could think of this. Obviously, this was not a well-considered deal but a win. Store. Song Yin frowned slightly. During this gap, which could not be any shorter, Bai Yi seemed to have confirmed his thoughts and said confidently, "Yes. I said it is impossible for me to work as a part-time worker, so I want to be a boss." Facing the confident Bai Yi, Song Yin stretched out her hand, rubbed her eyebrows, and seemed a little tired. "What kind of store is that and what does it mainly sell?" "I haven't decided yet. It would be best if it was something versatile that could sell anything," Bai Yi said as if it was a matter of course. "It's really difficult to communicate," Song Yin thought to herself, while keeping a smile on her face. "If this is just to open a store, you should do this business with me." Bai Yi looked at Song. Does this count as a rejection of his deal? But this is normal. This is just an ordinary transaction proposed by Bai Yi, and ordinary transactions may not necessarily be established, and the other party has the right to refuse. Chapter 2005. What about the dignity of being a boss? In fact, your family will come to see you today, Song Yin said. After chatting with Bai Yi last night, Song Yin contacted Bai Yi's family. In Song Yin's opinion, given Bai Yi's instead of letting him continue to stay in this small world of the sanatorium, it would be better to let him go out and have more contact with the outside world, which would be more conducive to his recovery and becoming a normal member of society. Oh. Bai Yi nodded. "So if you plan to open a store, it would be best to ask your family to help," Song Yin said. Bai Yi's family arrived very quickly, earlier than Song Yin had imagined. Half an hour later, several people met in a room that looked like a reception room. Song Yin chatted for a few words and left first, leaving the space to Bai Yi and the man opposite Bai Jincheng. This person is also the boss of Jincheng Group, and he controls this group, which is famous in Shangdu and even in China. Jincheng Group's main business is real estate, but it also covers other areas. Bai Jincheng is the helmsman of Jincheng Group, but he is not Bai Yi's father, but Bai. As they died many years ago, when Jincheng was first established, it was not called Jincheng but Jingguo. Bai Yi's father, Bai Jingguo, is the founder and helmsman of Jincheng. Of course, Bai Jincheng also has a place in, and it can be barely considered that the two brothers started a business together. Later, things developed slowly and everything was going well. Just when it was about to soar to success, Bai Yi suddenly developed autism. For the sake of his child, Bai Jingguo gave up almost everything he had and handed over many matters of the group to his younger brother. He and his wife took Bai Yi to seek medical treatment everywhere, while handling some things remotely. Although he unfortunately died in a car accident, Bai Yi was lucky enough to survive. After a period of time, Jinggu was renamed Jincheng and finally developed into today's Jincheng Group. "Are you really cured of your illness?" Bai Jincheng looked at Bai Yi and asked. "Who are you?" Bai Yi looked at Bai Jincheng and asked. Bai Jincheng's face suddenly showed an extremely embarrassed expression. He is actually not a cold-hearted person. In fact, the two brothers have a very good relationship. After Bai Jingguo got into trouble, Bai Jincheng kept Bai Yi by his side and always hoped that Bai Yi would get better. But as time went by, Bai Yi showed no signs of getting better. As his career grew bigger and his autistic hairline became more and more obvious, Bai Jincheng really did not have the extra energy to take care of an autistic child. Therefore, Bai Yi was sent to this sanatorium. Rather than leaving him to a nanny or something like that, the sanatorium was a better choice for the situation at the time. However, after all, there is no filial son for a long-term patient's bed. As time went by, Bai Jincheng's concern for Bai Yi gradually decreased. The last time they met seemed to be a year ago, and their relationship inevitably became cold. "I am your uncle, Bai Jincheng. Don't you have any impression of me at all?" Bai Jincheng stood up and walked in front of Bai Yi and said. Bai Yi stretched out a finger and shook it twice. "My uncle, I know, he's bald." Hearing Bai Yi's words, Bai Jincheng almost vomited blood. So the symbol of him in his nephew's mind was a bald man. Don't be fooled by Bai Jincheng's extraordinary handsomeness now. His every move exudes the charm of a mature man, and he is the standard image of a successful middle-aged uncle. But before, he was a typical Mediterranean. Because he thought too much. "I had a hair transplant," Bai Jincheng said, pointing at his face. "You really have no impression." At the same time, regret and guilt welled up in his heart for not caring enough about his nephew. "Let me think about it." Bai Yi also stood up and reached out to comb Bai Jincheng's hair back. "Oh, I remember now, with this hairline height, you are really my uncle." After a moment, Bai Yi clapped his hands suddenly and said happily, "Uncle, long time no see." "Haven't seen you for a long time." Bai Jincheng turned around with a depressed look on his face and sat back on the sofa, combing his messy hair. The baldness of his baldness, the receding hairline, and the crisis of baldness for middle-aged men have always been an eternal pain in his heart, and Bai Yi recognized himself through his pain. Bai Jincheng suddenly felt that it would be a good idea for Bai Yi to stay in this sanatorium. "I heard from the doctor that you have recovered now, judging from your performance just now." Of course, as the helmsman of a large group, Bai Jincheng cannot be so easily affected by emotions. Soon, he returned to normal, and spoke in a steady and magnetic voice, but he had difficulty saying the last 4 words. "Dr. Song's suggestion is to discharge you from the hospital and get in touch with the outside world more, so that you can better integrate into society. What do you think?" Bai Jincheng said with an equal consultation attitude, and did not rudely arrange Bai Yi's future life. "I want to open a shop and be a boss," Bai Yi said. "What?" Bai Jincheng was stunned. "Right." Bai Yi told Bai Jincheng the plan he had just mentioned to Song Yin. Bai Jincheng felt annoyed and had a lot of words to say. but they were stuck in his throat and he couldn't express them. Why does it feel like communication is more difficult than before? Uncle, let's make a deal. You help me open the store and I'll give you money. Bai Yi said. You don't need to pay. As for the store, I'll help you open it. Bai Jincheng waved his hand and said, for Bai Jincheng, opening a store similar to a grocery store is a piece of cake and not a big deal at all. Bai Jincheng would not care even if he just left a store to Bai Ye for chaos. Even if he lost money, Bai Jincheng could afford it. How much could a grocery store lose? Bai Jincheng still felt guilty towards his nephew Bai Ye, but he didn't care about this level of nonsense and trouble. If you have anything you can sell it in the store. It will also be good to have more contact with the outside world, said Bai Jincheng. Okay. Thank you, uncle, Bai Yi said, and he also completed the third transaction and obtained 5 points of power and wealth. However, because Bai Jincheng reached a deal with Bai Ye unconditionally, Bai Ye could actually choose not to make the deal and directly let Bai Jincheng help him open a store. But to be on the safe side, Bai Ye's choice is still to make a deal to ensure that things go smoothly. He can also get a certain amount of power and wealth. Why not do it in addition to opening a store? Bai Jincheng also wanted Bai Yi to move back home and arrange for him to go to school, but Bai Yi refused. Bai Jincheng did not force it and planned to take it slow. Now he would let Bai Yi live in this familiar environment for a while. Bai Jincheng was very efficient. In less than 3 days, someone sent some documents proving that Bai Yi also owned a shop of his own. Moreover, the main business scope and operating projects are quite broad. Although it is impossible to meet Bai Ye's omnipotent requirements, it is also quite good. In addition, Bai Jincheng also gave Bai Yi a mobile phone to facilitate communication between the two. Although he did not come, he still expressed the elder's care for the younger generation over the phone. Bai Yi also congratulated Bai Jincheng on his restored baldness, and expressed concern about his increasingly receding hairline. The conversation between the two sides was conducted in a friendly, peaceful and warm atmosphere, except that Bai Jincheng hung up the call a little too quickly at the end. But after all, he was a busy man, so Bai naturally forgave him very generously. Time soon came to the time when Bai Yi could teleport again, considering that the teleported world might be a real virtual world. Bai Yi has been cramming knowledge in various aspects these days and came to the correct conclusion that Dongma Xiaosan and Shukai Bitch are the real people. If he is lucky enough to come to that world in the future, he will definitely educate those young boys and girls and tell them that trading is the right way to go in life. What do you mean by you first and me first? In terms of transactions, everything is a paper tiger. Consume 50 points of wealth and teleport to Gotham City 5 times. With 100 zeros in his pocket and the umbrella in his hand, Bai Yi plans to go to Gotham City a few more times. There, the air was filled with the smell of a lot of trading. Since the staff of Wealth and Power has chosen such a suitable world, Bai Yi will certainly not give up just like that soon. Bai Yi disappeared in the room. Hello, is this Mr. Cobblepot? It's me, Xiaobai. Yes, that's Xiaobai. Damn. You can't even recognize my voice.
We make a deal, I even gave you paper money.
In a public telephone booth in Gotham City, Bai Yi held the receiver and said, his tone was quite dissatisfied. The Penguin Man on the other side was speechless. They had indeed traded before, but he really didn't know Bai Ye's name, let alone recognize his voice. It's so slow. Half an hour later, Bai Yi got into the Penguin Man's car again. Do you have any special news to tell me this time? Penguin looked at Bai Yi and asked, tacitly not mentioning Bai Ye's disappearance last time. Of course it's still a deal. I'm a businessman. What deal? Do you have anything else that I'm interested in? The Penguin is indeed very interested. Last time it was Batman's true identity. What will the other party offer this time? In other words, the Penguin is very interested in the White Knight itself. After Bai Yi left, he investigated Bai Ye's identity, but unexpectedly found nothing. This shows that the other party has an extraordinary origin and there may be a huge and terrifying force behind him. No, I want to know the whereabouts of some people. Bai Yi said. You want to know the whereabouts of some people? Penguin repeated. Who's? The leader of the Assassin's League, that, what's his name? Bai Yi looked at the Penguin and asked. The Penguin has a sentence that feels like a thorn in his throat, but he doesn't know whether he should say it or not, judging from your expression. Don't you know him? Bai Yi asked. I have heard of this organization. Penguin pondered. Evil and powerful. As a big boss, don't you feel ashamed to say that other organizations are evil and powerful? Where is your dignity as a big boss? Bai Yi interrupted Penguin. Chapter 1006 Bruce's demented father-in-law. You know nothing. Penguin said. They are just a bunch of complete terrorists. Crazy people. I am different from them. It seems to make sense. It must be hard for you to live in such a place. Bai Yi patted the Penguin Man's shoulder sympathetically. The Penguin Man suddenly felt a little sad. Is he easy? Because of his deformed appearance, he was looked down upon since he was a child, and finally embarked on this path. Then Batman came out and beat him up and sent him to prison every now and then, causing him heavy losses. Then, among that group of criminal colleagues, there are few normal ones, and it is difficult to find a partner. Don't be sad. It doesn't fit your character. Bai Yi interrupted the Penguin, who was looking up at a 45-degree angle, and asked if there was any information about the Assassin's League. If there was, we would make a deal. I can look for them. And if they are really in Gotham, I can find them. Penguin said. But what can you give? Here. Bai Yi took out a handful of US dollars like a tycoon and threw them out. Is it this my money? The Penguin looked at Bai Yi and said. You shameless man! How can this be your money? Isn't this my money? Bai Yi said. This is what I got from the transaction! This money, of course, is the 100,000 US dollars that the Penguin gave to Bai Yi. Alright, your money. Penguin put away the money and said. Okay, if I find the whereabouts of the Assassin's League, I will inform you as soon as possible. How should I contact you? No need to contact me, Bai Ye said. Well, you came to see me, said the penguin. No, I have no money. We have traded. So we are old business. It is not too much to give me a place to live, right? Bai Ye patted the penguin man on the shoulder. The penguin man stared at Bai Ye for a long time before he said, it is your luck to meet me, haha. Bai Ye smiled but said nothing. What the penguin meant by this was that in the huge city of Gotham, he was the only one among a few who would sit down and have a good talk with Bai Ye like this. If it were a lunatic like the Joker, they wouldn't care about issues like interests. At the beginning, the Joker and Harley Quinn pushed the penguin's car full of tobacco into the sea for fun, which made the penguin very unhappy. The penguin man would never do something so unreasonable that would not benefit him at all. Bai Ye smiled without saying anything because, even if he met that madman called the Joker, he could make the other party trade obediently. The members of the Assassin's League are hiding, and it is not easy to find them. On the night of the second day, which was when Bai Ye began to consume his wealth and stayed in Gotham City for 26 hours, Penguin found Bai Ye and said that he had indeed discovered that there were people from the Assassin's League in Gotham City and had found their whereabouts, unexpectedly. These people actually used Gotham Hospital as their base. Penguin teased the bird on his finger and said to Bai Ye, now our deal is done. Yes, it's done. Bai Ye nodded. In this transaction, he also gained 100 points of power and wealth up to now. Bai Ye has a total of 155 wealth points. As for the zeros unearned 5 points, they will be ignored for the time being. Most of the time the hospital is quite busy. Neither most of the medical staff nor the patients would have thought that a very extreme organization had already made this place their base in Gotham City. Judging from the surface, there is really no sign that this hospital has any connection with the Assassin's League. Anyway, Bai Ye wandered around here and couldn't find any traces related to the Assassin's League. This is a bit troublesome. Bai Ye shook the umbrella twice, but couldn't find anyone. How should he make the deal? After thinking for a while, Bai Ye walked towards the security room. Since he couldn't find anyone, he would let others come to find him. Hi, you are not allowed to enter here. The security room has functions of monitoring, broadcasting, and even shutting down and opening some facilities. Naturally, no unauthorized persons are allowed to enter. When Bai Ye approached, a uniformed security guard came over and stood in front of Bai Ye. I know, but I lost my father-in-law. Bai Ye said, can you help me broadcast it? Okay, he doesn't look like someone who is here to cause trouble. The security guard will naturally not refuse such a reasonable request. What is your father-in-law's name? My father-in-law is a bit seriously demented, Bai Ye said. He couldn't remember his own name, but he knew the relationship between my name and me. He just needed to broadcast Bruce's father-in-law and ask him to come here to meet me. Bruce. Yes, Wayne. Hey, kid, are you sure you're not kidding? The security guard frowned and looked at Bai Ye. In other places, Bruce Wayne is just an ordinary name, but in Gotham City, it is different. Almost everyone knows who Bruce Wayne is, of course. Same person, different fate. Bai Ye spread his hands and said helplessly, okay, if you dare to lie to me, I'll teach you a lesson. Before leaving, the security guard threatened Bai Ye, but the broadcast soon sounded. According to Wayne's somewhat demented father-in-law is expected to come here to meet his son-in-law. After a few minutes, clear footsteps were heard, but they did not sound like the footsteps of an old man with dementia, but rather the crisp sound of high heels stepping on the ground. Bruce, before I saw the person, I heard a slightly puzzled voice, and then a tall girl came from the corner. Hi, miss, this gentleman claims to be Bruce Wayne. He said he got separated from his father-in-law who has some dementia. Do you know him? The security guard who came out again after the broadcast and stared at Bai Ye asked first. The girl looked at Bai Ye deeply, nodded and said, that's it. I found my father. Come with me. Are these two a couple? The security guard looked at the two people leaving and felt that they didn't match well. That boy holding the umbrella looks like a high school student and doesn't look like a married man at all. How could he be married to such a mature woman who looks decisive and has a strong woman vibe? Could it be that he is a kept gigolo? That body doesn't look strong at all. Is this kind of pretty boy becoming popular now? Of course, the security guard who was daydreaming would not know that after the girl brought Bai Ye to a quiet and empty room, she instantly attacked, pulling out a dagger from somewhere and putting it on Bai Ye's neck. But after she was put on the rack, a hint of doubt flashed across the girl's eyes, as if she had subdued the other party too easily. Who are you? The new Robin? Did Bruce ask you to come? The girl looked at Bai Ye and asked several questions in a row. Not many people know about the complicated relationship between Batman and the Assassin's League. Only a few people, and they are all parties involved. The man in front of him was able to do that. Obviously he is an insider. And the Assassin's League would not reveal the news to others. Then, this slightly thin boy must be related to Batman. Judging from his age, he might be the new Robin, but his skills are really bad. Talia kept analyzing in her mind and put down the dagger on Bai Ye's neck. She had already seen that the opponent's fighting skills were a mess. Not to mention the dagger, even if she didn't use her hands, but only used her legs, Talia could beat him so hard that he was at a loss. Are you the lover that Bruce has been thinking about all the time? Bai Ye did not answer, but looked at the woman in front of him and asked back. He knew that Batman had a complicated relationship with the daughter of the leader of the League of Assassins, one of love and hate, and that she had given birth to a child for him. But Bai Ye had no idea what this woman looked like or what her name was. Now it seems that it is the woman in front of him, still thinking about him. Talia's focus was obviously elsewhere. She was also sure that Baiye was Bruce's man, coupled with Baiye's terrible skill. She had basically let down her guard. I came to find your father, Baiye said. What did Bruce ask you to come to him about? Did he ask you to come to me? Talia asked. No. Baiye shook his head. It was a deal. Deal? What deal? Talia was still very curious. The deal with your father has little to do with you. If you are interested, you can go find Bruce after bringing me to your father, Baiye said. Talia looked at Baiye with some displeasure. Now I believe you are the new Robin. Your annoying tone is exactly as Bruce's sometimes, but your skills are too bad. Hasn't Bruce started training you yet? I am not a militant person, Baiye said. Come with me. Talia said. Can I ask why you are here? Baiye asked, following behind Talia. Talia didn't stop walking, nor did she look back. Does this matter? If my father wanted to harm Gotham City, wouldn't Bruce stop my father? Just asking casually. Maybe there is a place where we can trade, Baiye said. Talia paused for it, then started again. Soon, they arrived at the Assassin's League's base located in the basement of Gotham Hospital, which was a rather dim and spacious room. At the end of the room, there was a chair. A man who looked a little old, with eyes emitting a strange green light and giving people an extremely dangerous feeling, was sitting there. He looked at Baiye, who followed Talia in with a hook-like gaze. The leader of the Assassin's League. Ra's al Ghul! Chapter Oz and 7. You cannot refuse this deal. Ra's al Ghul, also known as the Demon Chief and the Ninja Master. This man, who looks a little thin and already old, is actually over 700 years old. The thing that allowed him to live from more than 700 years ago to the present is also the purpose of Baiye's visit. The Pool of Lazarus. This is a magical spring water that has the ability to bring people back to life. It can heal all wounds on the body. As long as the time is not too long, the person can still be resurrected. Lars lived for countless years thanks to the Lazarus Pool. But this was not without cost, although frequent contact with this pool gave him endurance, strength, speed and various physical abilities far beyond that of an ordinary person. It also drove Lars crazy. It's not just Lars. Anyone who uses the Lazarus Pool will eventually sink. Even Talia once said that she was worried that one day, the person who came out of the pool would no longer be his father, but a demon, a monster. From Lars' eyes glowing with a strange green light, it can be seen that Talia's worries are not groundless. Boy, did Bruce ask you to trade with me? Lars looked at Baiye and said, his voice sounded like it came from a broken bellows. It sounds like the next time he uses the Pool of Lazarus to bring the dead back to life is not far away. Yes, a deal, Baiye said. And said, when did Bruce start to play this game? Or has he finally figured it out and decided to join our great cause? The great cause of the Assassin's League is to destroy all mankind, because Lars feels that humans are pests to the world. The second-year syndrome is not scary, but the second-year syndrome that has existed for a long time and has execution and destructive power is very scary. Lars is such a dangerous and terrible middle school student with a second-year syndrome. The Penguin's evaluation of the Assassin's League is quite correct. I want the water from the Lazarus Pool. Baiye looked at Lars and said. Lars heard this and laughed. What? Could it be that Bruce was seriously injured and can't recover? Bring him to see me. I can keep the position of leader for him. Lars admires Bruce Wayne as Batman very much and intends to regard him as his successor. And his beloved daughter has a relationship with Bruce. For Lars, it would be great if Bruce were willing to join the Assassin's League. Unfortunately, up to now, the two have different ideas and cannot work together. Lars is unwilling to kill Bruce because he values his talent and his daughter. Because of his principle of not killing, Batman was unable to completely solve the huge trouble of Lars. The two men have been killing each other passionately until now, but no one has been killed. But many innocent people have been killed and injured. The residents of Gotham City have a set of life-saving rules if they want to survive. For example, when White Knight first happened, everyone's reactions when they saw the Batman logo in the night sky were all true feedback from years of blood and tears and lessons learned. Lars is undoubtedly very happy now, because he sees Bruce Wayne bowing to him, whether it is sincere or not. Once the ceremony of joining begins, Bruce will have no choice. It seems that your father really has Alzheimer's disease. Baiye looked at Talia with sympathy. Talia didn't say anything, but her expression was very painful. Even if he didn't have Alzheimer's disease, he was sliding towards the abyss of madness. But is it something you, an outsider, can say casually? Talia's eyes swept all over Baiye's body, as if looking for a better place to stab. Baiye ignored Talia's gaze and took a few steps forward. Suddenly, the sound of a sharp blade being unsheathed was heard in the darkness. However, after Lars raised his hand, no dangerous assassin appeared to stop Baiye's step. Are you kidding? Even if Lars is in a weak state now, how could he be afraid of Baiye? A weak kid? Maybe I didn't say it clearly just now. Baiye walked up to Lars and said, let me repeat it again. It's me who wants to trade with you. I want the water from the Lazarus Pool. As he said that, he got up from his bulging clothes and took out 2 empty bottles of mineral water. Fill both bottles. Absurd. Everyone, including Lars, had this idea. What is the Pool of Lazarus? It is a spring of water that can give people eternal life. If it were not for the serious side effects, it would be a priceless treasure. Even with the side effects, it is still a treasure that many people flock to. This kid in front of me wants the water from the Pool of Lazarus as if he is walking to a roadside shop to buy a drink. This attitude is fine. What do these 2 bottles of mineral water mean? The labels on them are not torn off. Aren't they the cheap ones that can be bought for 2.5 cents in the market? There was still some unfinished liquid at the bottom of one of the bottles. Lars and the assassins were shocked when Baiye took out the 2 bottles of mineral water. They were not shocked but felt greatly humiliated. If it weren't for the power of the Staff of Wealth and Power, Lars would have drawn his sword at this moment. Very good. Lars squeezed out a voice from the netherworld through his teeth. What can you give? What does it take to get the water from the pool of Lazarus? There is no definite answer to this. Huge amount of money. Money can make characters like the penguin excited, but for an old monster like Lars, it is just a number. Besides, even if Lars offered a price, Baye would not be able to come up with such a huge sum. As for other things, what he wants most is to destroy humanity, and it would be best if he could subdue Batman and take him with him to destroy humanity. This is something that Baye cannot possibly do, so Baye will give something else, something that Lars cannot refuse. Putting down the 2 bottles of mineral water, Baye reached into his trouser pocket and fumbled around. This is it. Ha ha ha. When his anger reached its peak, Lars burst into laughter. His voice was as sharp and piercing as a night owl, revealing boundless rage. Boy, you are the bravest man I have ever met, braver than Bruce. Lars looked at Baye and said, so, you want to reject this deal? Baye looked at Lars and said, without any panic, oh of course. As he spoke, Lars reached out and grasped a sharp blade behind him. Pity. Baye, refuse this deal! As he said this, a black scepter appeared out of thin air between Baye and Lars, letting go of the umbrella in his hand. Baye grabbed the scepter and tapped the ground lightly. The bottom of the scepter touched the ground, and time and space seemed to pause at this moment. The ferocious expression on Lars' face froze in this pause, and then became strange. The scepter disappeared. Baye bent down, grabbed the umbrella that had not yet completely fallen, and threw the coin in his other hand towards Lars. Lars reached out instantly and grabbed the coin. Father Talia, who was not far away, took 2 steps forward in surprise, but stopped at Lars' signal. When the scepter appeared just now, no one could see it clearly. They just vaguely felt that something seemed to have changed, but they couldn't tell exactly what it was. Lars held the coin in his hand tightly, almost crushing it into a ball. His emotions told him to draw his sword and chop the boy in front of him into 18 pieces. But his mind told him that the transaction had already begun. He had taken the other party's coin and the transaction must be established. This could not be violated. Just as if Lars himself was a man of his word, abiding by the rules and regarding integrity as more important than anything else. Behind this, Lars instinctively felt a great terror, vague and indescribable. It's like what ordinary people feel when facing the vast, dark universe. All these confusing feelings made Lars impatient to complete the transaction and buy 2 500 bottles of Lazarus Pond spring water for 5 cents. You wait. Lars picked up 2 mineral water bottles on the ground and stood up. This scene left the hidden assassins dumbfounded. Their great leader actually agreed to this seemingly ridiculous deal. It doesn't make sense at all. However, no matter how unreasonable it was, these people could not go against Lars' will. His words are absolute orders in the Assassin's League. It's just like the forced transaction ability that Bai Ye used. Yes. The reason why Lars agreed to this transaction was because Bai Qi invited him to a forced transaction. Lars could refuse. From the very beginning, Bai Yi had no intention of conducting a normal, ordinary transaction with Lars. Bai Yi did not have anything in his hand that could make Lars excited and willing to exchange it for the water from the pool of Lazarus. If you want to get this magical spring water, the easiest way is to force a transaction. As for why he didn't ask for more, it was because Bai Yi could only take that much back. Even if he asked for more, Bai Yi wouldn't be able to take it all away. Of course, Bai Yi had considered making a deal with Lars like a body contract and making him his slave, but after consulting, Bai Yi found that he was currently unable to do this. It's not that the Staff of Power and Wealth can't do it, but Bai Yi's own level is not high enough. If he wants to maintain this kind of long-term forced transaction, he needs to consume a huge amount of wealth. Therefore, Bai Yi could only settle for the second best and get the greatest wealth he could get at the moment. The accumulation of primitive capital is indeed bloody and cruel. Looking at Lars, who seemed to be even older and more hunched, Bai Yi sighed quietly. Even though what he did and what he said didn't really have much to do, Bai Yi stubbornly believed that he had to make such an exclamation in order to show his class. More cool than cool. How can we live without some pursuits? Chapter 08 Mouth of the Abyss. The very ambitious Bai Yi stood quietly where he was, completely ignoring the fierce gazes of the assassins in the darkness. Fear. Just now, Bruce's demented father-in-law was staring at him with his scary green eyes. But Bai Yi was not afraid. If Bo says Bai Yi doesn't care, how can you care about the murderous looks of a bunch of small fry? Talia's eyes flashed with obscure meaning, and no one knew what she was thinking. Speaking of which, there are relatively normal characters in the Assassin's League who are not obsessed with destroying all humanity. For example, Lars' 2 daughters have little interest in destroying all humanity soon. The big devil Lars came back with 2 bottles of mineral water filled with Lazarus spring water and handed them to Bai Yi. Bai Yi was not worried at all about the authenticity of the spring water. He took it and shook it twice, then put it into the red plastic bag he had just taken out of his pocket with great satisfaction. So, is our deal done? Lars looked at Bai Yi, the murderous aura gushing out of his body, and he couldn't stop it no matter what. From the surrounding darkness, assassins walked out one after another, with the sharp blades in their hands pointed at Bai Yi. It would only take a second for them to rush forward and nail this guy to the ground. Talia didn't say anything and didn't try to stop what was going to happen next, but she also didn't take any action. Instead, she just stood by and watched. As long as Bai Yi confirms the completion of the transaction, Lars will let the little bug in front of him experience what it feels like to suffer excruciating pain. He won't let Bai Yi die too easily. The disadvantages of forced transactions also became apparent at this time. The rod of power and wealth protects the transaction itself, but not the two parties to the transaction. After the deal was done, Lars wanted to kill Bai Yi, which did not violate the rules of the staff of power and wealth. Lars was not going back on his word, nor did he want to take back the water from the Lazarus pool. He simply wanted to kill Bai Yi after the transaction was completed. He even wanted to use the 2 bottles of water from the pool of Lazarus on Bai Yi to ensure that Bai Yi would feel the greatest pain before he died completely. After a normal transaction is completed, it is naturally difficult for the two parties to turn against each other. However, it was a forced transaction and Bai Yi completed the deal by pressing Lars' head. It was normal for him to suffer brutal revenge from Lars after the transaction. As soon as Bai Yi confirmed that the transaction was completed, the sharp blade in his hand flashed a terrible cold light. Even if Bai Yi wanted to delay, he couldn't delay for too long. The things are already in his hands. Even if Bai Yi does not confirm it, the transaction will be confirmed and completed automatically after some time. Looking at Lars, whose murderous intent had become so strong that it materialized and whose eyes were actually glowing with a faint green light, Bai Yi felt that a shadow called death was approaching. This is an unprecedented experience. There was no trace of fear on Bai Yi's face. Instead, he showed a strange and brilliant smile, as if he was enjoying the feeling of dancing on the edge of a knife. Walking on a tightrope on a cliff, with his life hanging by a thread, he exhaled softly, looked at Lars and smiled and uttered one word: yes. In an instant, a cold light flashed across Bai Yi's position like lightning, seeming to illuminate the dark room. The next second, the ferocious look on Lars' face became even more intense, because he swung the sword with the determination to win. It missed, and the place where Bai Yi was just now was now empty. The moment the boy uttered that word and Lars swung his knife, he disappeared without a trace. Lars' blade didn't even touch the corner of his clothes. What about others? Talia's eyes widened behind him. This was definitely not a trick of hiding in the darkness. The situation just now was truly one of a kind with no way out. No room to hide at all. He is gone. Lars nailed the sharp blade in his hand to the ground at the place where Bai Yi had just disappeared.
Go! Investigate his identity and origin thoroughly for me!
What about Bai Yi? Of course. He had already returned to his room in the sanatorium, and the excited smile on his face had not yet faded. When Bai Yi received the news from the League of Assassins, his stay period had actually passed. The reason why he could still stay in Gotham City was that he was consuming his power and wealth. While consuming power and wealth to maintain his stay in other worlds, Bai Yi can return to his main world at any time. This is also the reason why Bai Yi dared to force a transaction with Lars, dancing on the edge of a knife. The feeling of being on the line between life and death is indeed very exciting, but Bai Yi has no intention of letting himself die like this. Hey, how much power and wealth do I have now? Hanging the umbrella on the hook on the wall and placing the water from the Lazarus pool on the bedside table, Bai Yi sat on the sofa and said, 1052. Hi, responded, gaining 900 points of power and wealth from the transaction just now. So 1 Lars is equal to 9 penguins. Bai Yi smiled. The mighty penguin man suddenly became a unit value. Bai Yi's first transaction was with a taxi driver in Gotham City, and he obtained 0,005 power and wealth value, which Bai Yi asked Hai to ignore. If there are small transactions in the future, they will be automatically added until the power and wealth value accumulates to 1 point before calculation later. He conducted 2 transactions with the penguin man and obtained a total of 200 points of power and wealth. Made a transaction with my uncle Bai Jinqing and gained 5 points of power and wealth. 5 fixed teleportation opportunities to the world where Gotham City is located consume 50 points of power and wealth. Before Bai Yi went to meet Lars, Bai Yi had a total of 155 points of power and wealth. After exceeding the time limit, Bai Yi consumed a total of 3 points of power and wealth, staying in Gotham City for a longer period of time, plus the power and wealth points obtained from a forced transaction with Lars. Now Bai Yi possesses the 1.52 points of power and wealth that I mentioned. He has apparently reached the requirements of a second-level agent. Am I now a level 2 agent? Bai Yi continued to ask. Are there any new permissions or abilities to become a second-level agent? One does not need to consume 1,000 points of power and wealth. Instead, as long as Bai Yi's power and wealth exceeds 1,000 points, he can become a second-level agent. After this, it will not have any impact even if the power and wealth value is consumed below 1,000 points. Open an independent portable space that can store substances other than living things. The size is 5x5 125 cubic meter. The space is in an absolutely static state, and all substances retain the state they were in when they entered. The number of normal transactions has been increased to 5 times in 24 hours, and the number of forced transactions remains unchanged. The stay time for teleporting to other worlds is 48 hours. You can choose to leave early in the 12th and 24th hours. Calculated from the return time, you can start teleporting again after 48 hours. The voice of the black machine explained the changes that had occurred to the second-level agent one by one. There was no special change when Bai Yi became a second-level agent. There was no shaking of his body, and no brilliant light. He just increased his power silently, and his authority to use the scepter was raised to a higher level. The change that most interested Bai Yi was naturally the extra independent space. 125 cubic meters is already a large space. Enough to hold a lot of things. How do I use it? Bai Yi asked, quietly becoming a level 2 agent. There was no special change in him, so he naturally didn't know how to use this portable space. Please choose a fixed location for the space entrance and exit, Hai said.
No mouth.
Bai Ye first glanced at his left hand, then said with a strange smile on his face, fixing completed. After a few seconds, Hai said. At the same time, Bai Ye finally felt some changes. He felt that a black space seemed to be connected to him, and he could place inanimate objects whose size did not exceed the size of the space itself into it according to his will. Give it a try. He stood up again, walked to the bed, picked up the mineral water bottle containing water from the pool of Lazarus, and put it into his mouth. The moment the bottle approached his mouth, it twisted slightly and disappeared. Bai Ye felt that there was an extra bottle of mineral water in the black space. After trying, Bai Ye took out the bottle of mineral water again, and it suddenly appeared near Bai Ye's mouth. It seemed to move forward a little distance before falling down and was caught by Bai Ye. It seemed interesting. Bai Ye kept trying until his mouth felt sore. Of course, this was just a subconscious action of Bai Ye. Even if he kept his mouth tightly closed, he could still put things into the space as long as he got close enough. It doesn't matter whether you open your mouth or not. After putting the 2 bottles of water from the Lazarus pool into his personal space, Bai Ye did not stop to rest. During the repeated experiments and attempts, he discovered a very interesting phenomenon. This phenomenon reminded him of the plot of a novel that he had accidentally come across when he was cramming for various related knowledge. Then it really is the mouth of the abyss, and his mouth cannon is invincible. Bai Ye had a malicious smile on his face. He took down the black umbrella hanging on the wall, then thrust the tip of the umbrella towards his mouth and thrust it hard, as if he was going to swallow the umbrella to commit suicide. Fortunately, there was no one else in the room. Otherwise Bai Ye would probably have to take medication and receive various mental treatments for a period of time. The umbrella given by the Penguin Man was naturally also put into Bai Ye's personal space. Then, Bai Ye opened his mouth slightly and took out the umbrella again. However, the umbrella did not fall down like the water from the Lazarus pool and be used by Bai Ye. Instead, the tip of the umbrella faced outward and flew towards him at the same speed as Bai Ye had just stabbed his own mouth. The heavy umbrella made a noise before it hit the wall and fell to the ground. There was also a small dent on the wall. That's it. Bai Ye smiled happily. The portable space would preserve the state of an object at the moment of entry. That is to say, the kinetic energy at that moment would also be preserved. When it is released again, this power will not dissipate. This led to the current situation. The portable space is not just a simple storage space. Bai Ye has made it have other functions. Reading more books is indeed beneficial. Bai Ye's mouth is no longer an ordinary mouth, but the mouth of a dangerous abyss. This episode is complete. Welcome to subscribe, turn on the small bell. Please leave your comments. I will continue to update the content behind.